welcome to our premiere episode of Pro Cuts. Today we are with 8-year veteran and former first-round pick out of Vanderbilt, Ryan Flaherty. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Give us a quick little background about your professional playing career, just so for the kids watching and listening, they know a little bit about who you are and where they can look up some of your stuff.
I don't know where they can look up my stuff, but played at Vanderbilt, went on to play with the Cubs in the minor leagues and Orioles, Braves, Indians over the past years.
Don't shortchange yourself, man. First-round pick is no joke out of Vanderbilt. That was what, 2008, correct?
2008, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad, man. That's not too bad. Not too shabby. Okay, so one of the things that stands out about you is you're from Maine, which is not, again, a hotbed necessarily looked at as a hotbed of talent for the outdoor sports, right? Is it fair to say that kids from the northern states are at a disadvantage when it comes to training in baseball?
I think they can be, for sure, obviously for the obvious reasons. Having recently just moved to Florida, it's January and you go drive by a field and there's 30 kids out there playing, and where I'm from there's 30 feet of snow, but you have to, you can look at it both ways. I think there's some disadvantages and some advantages. I mean, obviously, like we just said, the disadvantages, and I think there are some advantages. And I think some of the college coaches, I know my college coach at Vanderbilt recruits the Northeast heavily. And some of the belief there is that, some of these kids who haven't had a chance to practice as much as these other kids, maybe late bloomers, and me as a kid who grew up with a father who was a college coach, I had access to the indoor facility in his program to practice with, so that helped me.
So nowadays, training indoors is no big deal, right? Even the kids down in Florida where you live now, there's plenty of indoor facilities, state-of-the-art technology, and it's fun almost, right? You go do hit tracks and all these things. It's like you're in a virtual reality world. You were having to train indoors a lot, but the technology wasn't there at the time. So what were some of those primitive methods of training that you were using indoor that you feel like this is just fine for kids today, regardless of what technology is available?
Yeah, I think, you hit it on the head. I think it's, having lived it and spent a lot of my off seasons in Florida playing, you go to hit and you end up hitting just kind of indoors. Like you said, there's all these fancy machines now, hit tracks and other ways to almost simulate being outdoors. So, really it's about, getting swings. It's about, seeing pitches. It's about working on your game. And, for me, I always played 3 sports. So when it was baseball season, and then I kind of found my way when the fall came around, it was time for football, and then in the wintertime, it was time for basketball. So I kind of rotated, but the indoor facilities are definitely have become more primitive, and there's a lot more kids using them now for sure.
Do you think that playing all those sports, how long did you play them for? Did you play them all the way through senior year?
Yeah, my senior year I stopped playing basketball. My junior year I stopped playing basketball. Probably if you ask me what my biggest regret is, it would have been stopping that. I kind of thought it would have been an advantage for me just to be able to train in the wintertime for baseball. I'm not sure it was the case. And something I feel like if I went back and did it again, I probably would have kept playing basketball all the way through.
Why?
I trained during that time. I got more swings during that time. There's no doubt. Do I think, looking back on it, that was the reason why I went to Vanderbilt? That was the reason why I played professionally? No. I think at the time I did it, thinking it may have, but I guess I just grew up in a household. My brother played all the sports. My dad, multiple sports. And, for me, I enjoyed being on a field or in competition or playing in front of fans a lot more than just being in a batting cage alone in the middle of January when, there wasn't a lot on the line.
Right. So you just enjoyed playing some sort. It didn't matter what sport it was, as long as you were competing. It was kind of more beneficial for you in your training. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, and I feel, for me personally, I think it's tough these days. I understand the specialization, the year round, the travel ball, and a kid can feel like he's maybe getting behind um, in his area, where he has a bunch of his teammates who are playing the sport year round. But you go to ask a lot of these college coaches and professional coaches, and you even look up the makeup of rosters, on people I've played with in the big leagues, and I would say a majority of the kids born in America are multiple sport athletes, and I don't think that's a coincidence, just based off the competition factor alone.
What? So I mean, I was going to kind of ask you, what would your off-season workout plan look like? Like, what was the weekly schedule? But it sounds like it was always something for a sport, or was there ever kind of well, I guess if you look at when you didn't play basketball senior year, like what was your off-season plan during a 5-day week?
Yeah, I always had a tie to baseball. Like I said, my dad was a college coach, so even when I was playing football, in the winters when I was playing basketball, I would always still, find a Sunday when there was no basketball and go up with his team and work out. Um, as a kid in my house, I can remember hours and hours of just throwing a ball off the wall and fielding balls off the wall and emulating certain plays, whether it's backhand, forehand, and all this stuff has kind of come. They have cool ways to describe it now and on the internet and stuff. And it really goes back to, that's a lot of these things are what a lot of people our age were doing, at a young age. It's just throwing the ball off the wall. We hung a net from my basement, and my brother would put a tee down there. And my brother would flip the ball to me, and I'd hit it into the tee, and just you know as small as it may seem, it's baseball, and it's
Right. That was kind of my question going back before, is like, do you think that everything that kids are doing and they're caught up with the technology is that necessary? Do you think it's a step forward, or do you think in some cases it's a step backwards?
probably both. I could probably argue for both. I think some of the technology, it's probably good. I mean, there's some benchmarks there that I'm sure a lot of these colleges are using. Some of these pro teams are probably using, but I think there's a lost part of some of these benchmarks can maybe help you get recruited by, the school you're desiring to get recruited by. But the second you step foot on that campus and you're playing for that and a part of a team, you then all of a sudden need to bring value. And I think, sure, you can throw 95, or you can have a 105-mile-an-hour exit velo off your bat. And that's great. But now all of a sudden when you get there, you're going to be able to contribute to a team. And there's so many more ways to that than just some of these technology benchmarks that a lot of these players are training towards.
That was a great segue into what I wanted to ask you next. Thank you so much. I don't even know if you know what was coming, but having the role on the team and contributing to the team, right? I think your 8-year career is awesome for kids to look at, and I've told high school kids to look at it before. And the reason is because you played for a while, you played for 8 straight years, you didn't have to bounce around a whole ton at the major league level. You only played for 3 teams, and Baltimore was 6 of those years, wasn't it, or 5?
Mm-hmm.
So you had a great career, yet at the same time you didn't put up the sexy numbers, right? So what is it that we're missing the mark on? Because I think everybody, especially kids, are thinking success is based on what those metrics say, what those numbers say.
Yeah. As sad as it is, a lot of the times, some of it is. And I think being recruited, I remember being a high school kid and, I want to throw 90. And there are some benchmarks along the way that some of these kids should find important. However, in the big picture, there's so much more. As a kid playing, I played on every team I played on. In high school I played, at Vanderbilt I played, in the minor leagues I played. Well, I got to the big leagues, and all of a sudden I'm a utility guy playing once a week, once every 2 weeks, defensive replacement. And you have to find a way to bring value in whatever you're doing. And I think in that way, it kind of changed to, look, am I going to have a competitive at bat? And that competitive at bat can lead to an out. But it's going to be a competitive at bat. It's not going to be, a first pitch rollover. It's not going to be I'm going to grind the pitcher and defensively, I'm going to catch the ball. So when the coach puts me in the game and the ball is hit to me, he knows it's an out. And there's so much value in some of those smaller, old school cliches that, when the coach is writing the lineup, he's looking for something. He doesn't care about the guy. He doesn't care if you have 105 exit velo. He doesn't care if, you necessarily throw 95. He wants to win the game. And he's trying to put 9 guys in the lineup who he believes are going to win the game. And so I think you try to find ways to bring value to each team you're playing on. And some of the benchmarks in the recruiting process are important. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say they're not, but you have to find, once you're there, you're then going to be challenged with that for sure.
Right. And 100% they're important in the process. Yet at the same time, like you said, they're going to come watch you, right? They're going to come watch you play. They're going to come see if you're a winner, if you're a team guy, if you're not a team guy. They're going to figure all that out. For you, I mean, I know that it's, I made it to the big league, some people might say, but that's not very exciting for maybe a kid who's used to starting and playing his whole life and then having to go learn how to be a role player, right? Or was it not a big transition for you?
It was. I think there was, being part of the big leagues, and that was my dream as a kid. And I was fortunate enough to play for coaches throughout my younger years as a player. My dad, Coach Corbin at Vanderbilt, that preached the importance of that. That preached the importance of being a teammate. What does it actually mean to be a teammate? I've heard Coach Corbin say many times when he's calling a recruit and he says, "Hey, how was the game?" A high school recruit, he's not really caring about what you say, and you say, "Well, I was 1 for 4 and I had 3 strikes." He wants to hear about how the team did, and I think that says a lot about a kid and whether he's aware of what happened with his teammates and how did his team do, and it's not just about himself. And there's always ways that these coaches are trying to find out who you are as a person more than what maybe your numbers say.
So how do you coach yourself mentally through that, though? Because like all this, like it's good, like what you're saying and what we hear is good, but a kid's saying, okay, well, I get it, but how do I do it? Like how do I be a good teammate? How do I carve out that niche? Like how do I understand my role? Like for you, how did you understand what you needed to do to manage to have an 8-year career?
Yeah, so I think it's different for each kid. I mean, every kid wants to play in the major leagues. And along the way, I think, you're in different roles. At one time in my career at Vanderbilt, I was playing off the bench, so my freshman year. So there was that. I've done this before. In the minor leagues, I had played in the platoon where I wasn't playing off lefties all the time. And, it's the greatest compliment you can ever have as a player and looking back to say, hey, that guy was a great teammate. I mean, these great players come and go. And, you look at it, players I've played with, someone says their name and, oh, yeah, I remember I played with him. And you look up and look at his numbers, and great numbers. And, it's just there's so much more to it than just that.
But he was an ass.
Nah.
Great numbers, but you ought to be a good person, good team.
There's just too many players. There's too many players with talent on this planet. And it's like, how are you really going to separate yourself? Because if you're relying just solely on talent, you better be in that top 5% because everyone else is just going to blend together. And then all of a sudden it goes back to the coach trying to write 9 guys into a lineup, trying to get 25 guys in a team or 35 in college. And how are you going to separate yourself? Because, when I went to Vanderbilt, I wasn't the most talented player. When I first started playing in high school and even on my main team, I wasn't the most talented player. So you've got to find ways to separate yourself. And the ones who, like you said earlier, the ones who they're trying to find out, well, how do I be a good teammate? You know what? Not everyone ever does become a good teammate. And the truth is that, if you're not able to figure that out, then you probably won't.
Yeah, well, that's just reality right there. So it's good. All right, so you played for how many years did you play professionally? I know 8 were in the bigs.
Yeah, so I played probably 3 in the beginning of 4, so four in the minor leagues, probably 12.
Okay, so you were in the game for over a decade as a player. Now you're transitioning into scouting. You've seen how players have changed. What did the premier players look like a decade ago versus today?
The same.
That's simple, huh?
I mean, the same. I don't. I just think there's. The truth is a lot the same. I think there's, like you said, there's all these different benchmarks. There's all these different numbers. There's all these different terminologies, and they're great. There's a lot of ways to quantify things in today's game. You can quantify what a fastball is playing up means, and you can quantify, you know, how hard a ball was hit more. You can quantify, launch angle. But the game's the same. Sure, there's shifts. There's, the bullpens are being used different. But the game's the game, and that's the beauty of the game. And as much as we want to think it's changed, and the little it has changed, it's still the same game.
I mean, are guys bigger, faster, stronger than ever? Like we're told, they are, or are they, they're not. Guys have always been big, fast, and strong.
No, they are. There's definitely, I'm sure just like in track, these guys keep getting faster. In football, they keep getting faster. In baseball, they're bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, I think there's definitely training ways, and I mean, you look back 20 years and guys had a lot more jobs in the off season. Well, now it's a year round. Guys are training the second the last out's made. A lot of my teammates, they'd be in the gym within 2 days training for the next year, where before guys would put the ball down maybe to January. Guys would put the ball down to spring training. Guys are just training at way higher levels. Therefore, sure, the competition is definitely getting better, like it is in any sport.
Right. So I guess I'm trying to look at the evolution of the player. Scouts did they look for one thing 10 years ago, but now that's not as attractive maybe now or going forward? Does that make any sense?
I think the good scouts are still looking for the same thing.
Okay.
I mean, they're looking for, obviously, talent's talent, and I think, like we said, it's easier to quantify some of these things that the scout is looking for. But, I believe that the good scouts are still evaluating talent, but there's so much more to the big picture and watching a player and how he interacts with his teammates. And, is he the first guy on the line before the game starts? And does he run balls out? And there's so many more things that these college coaches are looking at than your box score, and that whether you squared up a fastball 3 times out of 4. It's part of the equation for sure, but there's so much more to it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I try to look. I'm just trying to look at it like basketball, right? Is an easy one to see how it's changed, how it's gone from the big guy to now more of the shooter game. Is baseball going to change like that? And I guess time will kind of tell. I mean, do you think so? I mean, now is it less about speed? I mean, we don't see as many guys, stealing bases as before. We see more home runs, more strikeouts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it has, and I think it's an adjustment game. I think the game's always evolving, and then the pitchers will change. And then when I first came up in the league, everyone was throwing sinkers and sliders, sinkers, sinker, slider, sinker, slider. And then all of a sudden the evolution came in where everyone's pitching up in the zone with fastballs. And what's this guy's induced vert? What's his spin rate? Can he pitch up in the zone? And I think slowly, all of a sudden, every guy's got high spin rate. Every guy's got high induced vert. And the hitter's seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. So at some point, you'll see an adjustment. And I think that's why, just to say, well, this is what we're looking for. Well, that may be what we're looking for in 2020, but in 2022, you may be training your game for this, and in 2022, the game may adjust. And so I think, at the end of the day, the only thing that's there is good players, and those guys last through all these different phases of pitching, through hitting. Like I said, I'm sure if you asked a lot of teams, where the strikeout was allowed as a hitter, 5 years ago, I'm sure there's a lot of teams that are looking for guys who aren't striking out as much anymore, who can put the ball in play. And all of a sudden, that's a rarity. And if you're a rarity, then you're wanted.
Do you think a player like you exists in Major League 5-10 years from now?
It depends. It's tough to say. I think, looking back at myself, I was fortunate that I played on a lot of good, successful teams, and that I had a role, and that I had, the things that some coaches probably wouldn't value. I was fortunate I played for a manager in the big leagues who valued that. So for me to say, hey, it's going to be there, well, let's hope you play for the right coach. And I hope you play for a guy that values players and what they bring to a certain role and to a certain team, rather than just acquiring, hey, this team has, X amount of talent. And the teams I played on, especially in Baltimore, hey, look, we didn't have the same payroll that some of the other teams in that division had, but I played for a manager who said, look, this guy brings this to the team. So, I guess moving forward, I believe there will. I think those are the teams that, good coaches can recognize those things in players. And unless you're playing a team that has a high payroll and can afford to pay, just the 13 position players that are superstars, then you're going to need those kind of players.
I love it. I love it. The message to me seems pretty simple. Just work your tail off and be the best teammate you can be and the best player you can be. And it kind of works itself out from there. I love it, man. What would the advice be to a young guy today? Because ultimately I'm trying to get a message out to high schoolers, hear from, pro players, and you say, hey, kid, do this.
You got to work, there's no doubt. And you could say all this other stuff, this, and it sounds cliche. Oh, you outwork people, but you have to. And those are the guys that rise to the top. And unless you're in that top 5%, which is so small, that can rely on just pure raw talent to take them where they're going to go, then the next 95% is separated through hard work. And it's so true. It's true today. It'll be true tomorrow. It's true in basketball. It's true in football. You've got to outwork everyone, and you find your own ways. I think that's the unique thing in this. Is for me, I had a dad who was a college coach, and I love to just watch players. I'd watch players, and I'd say, I want to try to do that, and that's it. That's the beauty of the game, and the beauty of learning, and the beauty of growing. And
love it. Ryan Flaherty, thank you very much for doing this, man, and good luck in the next stage of your career.
I appreciate it, Josh. Thanks for having me.